Passage 5, it has 4 questions, question number 28 to question number 31. Now the passage basically talks about how some of the Asian countries, they need to fight the environmental emergency or environmental crisis. They cannot follow to or they cannot afford to follow the West's policies regarding this. And the passage gives us many solutions or probable solutions to this issue, like this transition will happen only if the governments lay down predictable long-term policies. Then it talks about subsidies and how they should be removed or substituted with more effective policies. The next paragraph does praise some of the Indian business houses for setting up the right example. Look at this line: Indian companies such as Godrej and Boyce, Infosys and many others have continued to build on this pioneering legacy. Now the last one, or the last paragraph, says governments must set the rules. Much of the Prime Minister Modi's energy strategy consists of laudable forward-looking elements. Look at the word laudable, it's a very positive word. So the author says that how there's a need for the emphasis on using new technology to fight the environmental crisis. Now let's come to question number 28. According to the passage, why cannot Asia follow the West's get dirty, get rich, get clean strategy? Now this mentioned in the first paragraph, and the reason for that is given here. Now it's clear that India and other countries cannot afford the skyrocketing cost of environmental degradation. Now option 1 says Asia lacks the resources. Nothing has been mentioned with relation to this strategy in the passage. So 1 is wrong. Asian political leaders used to say that the region couldn't afford the cost of environmental progress. It is given in the passage just to explain why this policy is in question. It doesn't give option 2 as a reason, or statement 2 as a reason why Asia cannot follow it now. And of course the political leaders used to say that that was in the past. It doesn't talk about the present situation. Hence option 2 cannot, or statement 2 cannot be called correct. Statement 3 says Asia cannot afford the skyrocketing cost of environmental degradation. Now directly that's the answer. Option 4 says governments in Asia are unable to set the rules or lay down predictable long-term policies. This is a twisted statement. Here it says that the governments need to lay down predictable and long-term policies, and nothing has been said in the passage whether they're able to do it or not able to do it. Hence your answer is option C. 3 only. Question number 29 is a central idea question. Now in this kind of a question we need an option which encompasses all the major ideas in the passage and also talks about the author's primary purpose behind writing the passage. Option A says Asia is fighting an environmental emergency. Now this is a fact mentioned in the passage. It's a very narrow idea, or it's a sub idea. Option B, businesses have the money, the technology, and above all the human ingenuity to tackle the crisis. Now ingenuity means the need or innovation. Now B is also a sub idea of the passage, can't be called the central idea. Option C, India and other countries cannot afford the skyrocketing cost of environmental degradation. It's a line taken from the passage. So look at A and B and C. All 3 options, they talk about some narrow examples that the author has mentioned in the passage, or they just paraphrase something which is already mentioned in the passage. Hence none of them can be called the central idea of the passage. Option D says, using the businesses effectively aided by government policies, Asia can solve the environmental crisis. The key word in this option is can. So there is a possibility, and this is something like the businesses, they need to act or take a more proactive role. The government has to lay down certain long-term policies which are clear in vision and focus, and praising of the Indian government's efforts. So all these make this option the right option, or the right answer to the central idea question. Moving on to the next question, which is question number 30. Now it says, with reference to the passage, which of the following is or are true? So this is a direct question. Now the first line says India lacks the technological and engineering skills. Now this very part makes it incorrect. In fact, the passage talks the exact opposite. It says that India has the technological engineering skills to make make its presence felt in the fight against environmental crisis. Option 2 says rationalization of subsidies is more useful than regulations. Now this is mentioned in a paragraph. Let's come to the 5th paragraph. It says, indeed, getting rid of fossil fuel subsidies may prove even more important than subsidies to support wind and solar power. So this part makes it the correct one. That is, rationalization of subsidies is more useful than regulations. Now option 3 says, despite having capabilities, businesses are not coming forward. Now the exact opposite is mentioned. For example, the US Green Building Council recognized the CIA Shorabji Godrej Business Center in Hyderabad as the most energy efficient building. So this clearly contradicts whatever is mentioned in this option, that the businesses are not coming forward. In fact, the opposite is true according to the passage. Option 4 says, there is no efficient alternative to the old central power station model adopted by China and other more traditional economies. Now this one is incorrect according to the passage. The passage doesn't talk about there is the passage doesn't say that there is no efficient alternative. In fact, the passage or the author gives a lot of alternatives to fight this crisis. And the second part, the more traditional economies, they are not even mentioned here in the passage. So the correct answer to question number 31 is A, 2 only. Question number 31. The author is most likely to agree with which of the following? That is, it's an inferential question. Now it says Asia can hardly avert the environmental crisis due to indifferent and unconcerned political leaders. We don't have enough data in the passage to mention this. They say that Asia has a crisis, but it can be fought with certain innovations and certain regulations. So the author never says that Asia can hardly avert. The author doesn't support it, and we don't think that the author would agree with this. B says fossil fuel subsidies should be scrapped solely for the reason that they lead to corruption. Now the sole reason is not given for that. In fact, the previous question said that the rationalization of subsidies is a better thing to do. So the word solely for the reason, that makes it incorrect. Decentralized microgrids turn out to be more efficient than large and centralized ones. Now this one is mentioned in the passage. If you go through the passage, you'll find the lines which talk about this. For example, it says the emphasis on using new technologies such as building small local microgrids rather than relying only on large central power stations and large-scale grid networks is one way that India can leapfrog the old central power station model adopted by China and other more traditional economies. Hence, that option is, or it looks like, the correct option. Option C. Option D says working on its strengths, India and its businesses can lead Asia by example in quest to avoid the impending environmental crisis. Now this option is a very twisted option. Looks like the correct option, but it's wrong because of the word can lead Asia by example. There is no question of a race or a fight and setting an example for other countries. It doesn't talk about that. It simply says some of the business houses in India have set an example for the other business houses in India. It doesn't talk about leading from the front and leading with an example. So that option is misleading. Hence the correct answer to question number 31 is C.